Good afternoon. My name is Andy. That's what I go by, and that's what most people call me in the clinic. The one thing about speaking, there are two times where you don't want to speak. The first is be the last speaker before lunch, and the first speaker after lunch. So I'm not going to show you any slides because I'm going to keep you hopefully engaged. And what I want to do, hopefully, with the time that we have together is kind of engage more of the audience. You people have been extremely polite. And I want to hear you. I want to hear your thoughts, and I want to hear some of your questions to you. And I want to try to take this wherever you want to take this. Why? Because I don't know what you know. I don't know what you don't know. I don't know what you want to know. And that's what today is about. Today is about, hopefully not only educating you, but also you're going to enlighten us in terms of where we're going to take it. Linda talked a little bit about past, present, and future. I will get to a little bit about the present and the future in a minute. But we'll start right from the beginning. For me, everybody in this room has a personal story. So the first thing is CF is always personal. It's always personal. It touches everybody, no matter what, in terms of how it goes. So let me tell you my story. 20 years ago, I'm working basically as a junior consultant. I come on, and there was this patient who came in with an exacerbation of CF. And the patient was more than 18 years old and had to be admitted to the adult floor. And at the time, there was no adult clinic whatsoever. And it was managed by a pediatrician. The pediatrician says, I will hold your hand. I will tell you what you need to do, but I need you to admit that patient to an adult floor so that we can provide optimal care for that patient. And at that point, I'm going look, I'm a respirologist and I also work in the intensive care unit. And it's like, well, isn't CF a kind of kid's disease? I didn't think there was any adults that were out there from that perspective type of thing. So I was completely ignorant to CF. And that's important because, as Ian says, is that somehow, some way I got into it, and it became a vocation. And this is, I will tell you, all the healthcare professionals that are in CF across Canada, I know most of them by their first name basis love CF. Extremely dedicated to CF. So CF is extremely different compared to other disease processes. So you could be talking about hypertension, diabetes, COPD, emphysema, whatever type of thing. There is a lot of passion around CF, a lot of passion. The other thing I remember is Ian had mentioned Doug Summerhays. Doug Summerhays was a parent with a child with CF. And they didn't take no for an answer because you can imagine being back in the 1960s and being told that your kid has CF and this is a terminal disease. Okay? So Doug and Donna and a whole bunch of other parents sat down and says, we're not going to take that. Okay? We're not going to accept it. We are got to do something about that. And as a small advocacy group, as parents, they got together, and basically that was the birth of CF Canada. Okay? So all of you here make a difference at all levels. And that's really, really important. Okay? Because we're all a team here, and that's why we call it Team CF all the time. So that's a personal story for me. So anyway, I got into it and I said, look, we got to create an adult program. That's me. And it won. Right? And then I had to gather basically other people out there that were trying to get them enthusiastic, trying to find basically a nurse practitioner, a dietitian, a social worker, physiotherapist, and try to basically bring it all together. And the reason this is important is because, in Canada and actually in North America, when they look at the healthcare model, when they look at healthcare groups now that you see with family practice, CF was the shining example and continues to be the shining example of a multidisciplinary team that look at all aspects of care. And that will continue. And we're extremely proud of that. The other thing about the whole, we were hearing a little bit about advocacy and finances, we'll come back to that in a minute type of thing, money. Nobody knew what CF was. Nobody knew basically what the disease was. It was classified as an orphan disease. It was this boutique disease. Nobody cared about. There weren't that many patients about that, et cetera. But, there were a lot of people that basically met a CF patient, were heartened or enlightened by that, and that made a big difference. And then all of a sudden there was this chatter about CF everywhere. Locally, bars, pubs, restaurants, basically politicians, et cetera, and it just basically grew. And that, you could see that the face of CF started to grow. And we were advocates. We were quiet, we were Canadian, we were very polite, but we definitely did nudge a lot of people. We got people like Celine Dion, who had basically had a relative who had cystic fibrosis. We had Mila Mulrooney that was involved. Now we got Austin Matthews. Okay, so this is really important because he's got an uncle that had CF as well type of thing. So we keep pushing it out there because we want CF to be the forefront. And I'm going to tell you the success story. Over my life, when I was born, we didn't have a cell phone. I don't think we even had a phone hardly. It was like we didn't have a television, we didn't have a computer, right? And so Linda showed you all the modalities that are going on from that perspective. And I want to talk a little bit about the advances in research, which has been extraordinary. The first meeting I remember going to, Linda and I went to this international meeting, and it was about maybe 2,000 at the time, scientists, healthcare workers, basically all together, et cetera. And there was this guy, Francis Collins, who was one of the co-founders, or who basically found the gene, the CF gene type of thing. And at one of the sessions, it was a plenary session, there's 2,000 people. And you got to remember that people in healthcare, we're pretty anal retentive, right? We do know how to have fun, but we're pretty stiff upper lip type of thing. This guy pulls out a guitar and starts singing his song, Dare to Dream, Dare to Dream. And I'm looking at Linda, I'm going, what on earth is this guy going on? I thought it was like at an Amway, convention. It's like, and I said, CF is really different. Because I go to a lot of science meetings, and I tell you, nobody pulls out a guitar and starts basically dreaming and basically singing to a dream. And the dream is really coming true. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Over the last 20 years, the dream has really come true. Why? Because, as I said, you heard basically 1960s, this was uniformly a fatal disease. Okay? That's gone. For the most part, it's gone. This is now a chronic disease, and it will be a curable disease. Okay? And I'm going to tell you that story, because it's a story that's happening right now. So before I do that, I just want to look around the audience, because I know that I heard the stories of a lot of people, and they were dealing mostly with kids. There was a few adults from what are you worried about? What are your fears? What are your fears for your child or the person that you love that has cystic fibrosis? And talk about those fears, and bring those fears along, and open it up. Why? Because now everybody's chattering. Everybody is basically on Facebook, everybody's on Twitter, everybody's basically talking. It's okay to talk about what are your anxieties and fears. Adult world. I live in the adult world. So we do a lot of preparations. In life, we do all of this. We graduate from various programs. We graduate as we go through these things. We go from kindergarten, to basically to grade school, to high school, to university, college, jobs, marriage, blah, 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 right? I think we all understand that, and that's what we're trying to build for our kids. It's interesting that a lot of the patients, the first time they come to my clinic, and we start telling them some stuff. We start telling them about what adult world is like. We crystal ball it for them. What do you mean I'm going to go to school? What do you mean I'm going to finish school? What do you mean I'm going to get a job and pay taxes? What do you mean I'm going to get married? What do you mean I'm going to have children? What do you mean I'm going to retire? Right? This is like an aha moment for a lot of people, for parents and for patients. And that's what happens. That's the vast majority of patients with cystic fibrosis now. Okay? They're going to live their lives, and they're going to live their lives to probably a normal, whatever normal is, to the end of whenever that is. So that's almost a given now. In pediatrics, people were worried that kids were going to basically die. That's like a thing of the past. Okay? When you come to adult world, it gets a little tougher. It gets a little bit more serious about some of the treatments, et cetera, whatever type of thing. So what's the story? What's the progress that's actually occurring from this situation? And by the way, we know for sure the patients feel the anxiety. We know that the patients are depressed. We know the parents are anxious. We know the parents are depressed. We know that, okay? The healthcare profession has your back. The CF Canada has your back. We understand all of this because we are also human beings. We are also parents. We also look after these people. I have 105 patients in my clinic, and they're all kids to me. Linda's got 150. They're all kids to her, right? Her kids, from that perspective. That's what I'm talking about, the personality of how it goes. And when you look at this across Canada, we talk about 42 clinics. I'm telling you, I know all the directors by first name, as Ian does as well, type of thing. We talk about this all the time. You don't hear about any of this stuff, but we talk about this all the time. And we talk about how can we make your life easier? How can we make the kids' lives easier, quote unquote, more normal in terms of basically functioning? And that's why we have the clinics, and that's why coast to coast we make sure, whether you live in Newfoundland or basically Vancouver or wherever you live, the clinics are pretty much the same. We have the same sort of metric of people that basically run the programs. You have usually a nurse, there's a physician that's involved. Almost always it's a respirologist because a lot of this is driven by lung disease. And you've got a dietitian, you've got a social worker, you've got a physiotherapist. So even if you transition, let's say you want to go to university in Alberta or something like that, no problem. I pick up the phone, I call up my friend Mike. He says, got a kid that's coming there, university, blah, blah, blah. Notes go over, we have a chat about things, etc. They go to the clinic, it's like exactly the same. Okay? So not everybody's doing their own thing. There's not the standard of care that's going up and down and all over the place from that perspective. So that's really important because that healthcare network is really, really important, and that's been designed purposely, and we will continue to do so along with that and with the partners that we have, obviously with CF Canada from in terms of financial support and also other support from that perspective. back to the adult world. So we understand that the kids have to transition at some point. As I said, you might be going from high school to university, high school to college. What do? You go down with them that weekend, you go to the college, check out the university and everything else. We have a transition program in CF. So what happens is the adult guys come on over to the pediatric clinic. Hi, how you doing? I'm not scary. Okay, I'm not gonna, take your head off, whatever. It's okay. It's, I'm the new Linda Petter. Not as pretty, but I'm the new Linda Petter. So it's like that, and so we try to lighten it up for them, and they understand all of that sort of stuff like that. But the key thing is, and we do invite, obviously, the parents or loved ones, whoever want to come to. Anybody can come to clinic. We don't have a get out of here type of scenario. But we got to make sure it's okay with the patient, right? So when I talk about transitions, I'm not talking about just transition of clinics. We're talking about transition of responsibility to the kids, right? Just like they're going to university and everything else, they're going to have to learn how to go to figure out where their classes are and where to study and where they live and how to look after themselves from that perspective. It's called growing up, and that's what we teach them, how to do that type of thing. And the reason we say this is because we say we're going to take the burden of your disease, say this to the patients, we're going to take the burden of your disease off your parents and onto us and onto you. And that's like a, what? What do you mean? I'm not going to have people bugging me anymore about my physio. No, we didn't say that. We're going to bug you. But your parents are not going to bug you as much. We are going to bug you. We're going to have you come into clinic all the time and say, how's it going? What's your challenges in your life? How is it going? No, I don't want to get up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning to do 2 treatments or 3 treatments or whatever the case would be. Fine. Let's figure out a program together. We make it personal. Okay, we make it personal for those individuals. So let's not talk about personality in terms of how they do it, because we realize that nobody wants to do this stuff, right? I couldn't do half the stuff, right? I couldn't do half the stuff that they actually do. When we understand that they're human beings and that compliance is a big issue for them, etc. So we work on things like anxiety and fear and depression. We work on compliance, we work on independence, and we try to hopefully put a program together that will be satisfactory and helpful to that particular patient. And we take measurements. That is, we have a scorecard, and we happen to send them off for pulmonary function or whatever type of thing, etc. And we get them more engaged into that. And we also try to get them to be more engaged about reading about their disease and learning about their disease and what are the potential complications. But most importantly now, over the last, I would say probably 5 years now, every patient, every parent comes in, what's my genetics? What's my genetics? What's my genetics? They want to know. Because this is where so-called gene therapy is coming along, and this is in fact where we see these new medications that are coming along, and that's what I want to talk about. So I'm not going to talk about all the standard care that's happening, but we're talking about treatment for today and for treatment for tomorrow, most importantly. And what I'm talking about is that we talked a little bit about there are drugs that are coming out. You've all read about them, heard about them, they've been sensationalized, and these are medications that are designed to fix the genetic problem. Okay? So let's go back a little bit in terms of, very briefly, genes are like a blueprint to you, right? And so it makes proteins in the system, and that makes us who we are. That's how we are, in fact, different. And the protein we're talking about, in this case, we're talking about the CFTR protein per se. Think of it as a key, and that key could either be not made, busted, or there's a receptor that's blocked, or that opening just doesn't open up. That's basically what it is. And so if we can fix the lock, and if we can fix the protein, okay, we can make things work much better. And that's important for damage control for adults who have got basically set amount of burden of disease. And then we look at basically the children of the future, basically where you have these drugs. So as an example is knowing your genetics can be important. So people have asked me about Kalydeco or ivacaftor. Why can't I take this? Because it's your genes that are going to determine which drug you're going to be taking. Same thing with this medication called Orkambi correcting something. And you're going to hear product X and product Y. They're all in research now. They're all humming along, and we're looking at these things in terms of finding out, okay, what's the product that you require? To me, it's like, it's a pair of glasses or a pair of shoes. We've got to find the right fit for every individual, and that's why we need to know what the genetics are. So you can imagine, I think, Tammy, you showed a slide where you had all of these treatments that covered so neatly. Like, you got to come to my house, okay? Because you can imagine that if you took all of that down to one pill that you were taking twice a day. Okay? And that's happening now in clinical trial, depending upon what your genetics is about. That's what these products are all about. That's what they're doing. And the results, the preliminary results we're seeing from a physiologic perspective and in basic research type things, it's really promising, very exciting stuff. So this is not pie in the sky anymore. It's not pie in the sky. So finding the right keys to keep the channels working and to basically to make it go is going to be really important. So you can imagine, for the parents that are right down there, you can imagine if we know exactly what the genetics are and these products are available, you know, yes, maybe they have some pancreatic enzymes, maybe they don't require it anymore because they're actually taking one pill that's actually fixing the problem. Okay, that's pretty powerful stuff. As I said, 20 years ago, people said, we're going to cure this disease. I went, you kidding? This is a Mount Everest of, you know, research or whatever. They're pretty close. You know, they're probably just below the peak. Just below the peak. Then you've got gene therapy that's coming along. Okay, you can imagine. You go in for treatments once every 2 or 3 weeks, they give you an injectable. That actually pumps more gene into you, basically fixes the protein, basically makes it work from that perspective. Imagine that, gene therapy. Okay, that's where we're at. That's the tip where we're at right now in terms of where research is going on. And this is not, as I said, somebody's thinking about this test tube in a lab someplace or whatever. There are clinical trials that are going on right now. And that's why we're really, really excited about where we're going. The other theme behind research, I will tell you, is that no patient will be left behind. Doesn't matter what your genetics are. We got to find the treatments. We got to find the things that are going to correct your gene problem. It's no good to say, okay, we've got a treatment for 50% of the patients. Okay, that's a good start, but we want to make sure that we can find hopefully treatments that will basically cover everyone. Okay, and it's important because the patients are hearing about this and they're asking me all the time, and so we're doing all of these things. What are the challenges that you have that might be a little bit more unique in terms of adult world? Imagine if you had these therapies that were, you know, curative. You know, or at least controllable in terms of basically reducing the burden of lives and making sure that these guys are living otherwise normal lives with half the stuff they actually have to take, etc. Simplify their lives. Amazing. The other thing I want to tell you a little bit about is that there's a lot of research that's going on in Canada, a lot of research. Jeff had alluded to it very briefly, type of thing. You're going to hear a little bit, just a snip of it. But I'm proud to say myself and Linda have been involved in every CF, pretty much every CF clinical trial that's gone on from A to Z type of thing. So patients are fantastic. I mean, they love being participants in these studies. So we love working with young people and children and parents and everything else. And we get them into these various programs. And it's been very successful because we can take a dream to the bench, to the bedside, you know, and back again very quickly in a matter of 5 or 7 years, you know, and that's amazing compared to many other products that are brought out in the market type of thing. So there's ongoing research that are looking at all these products that we're talking about, et cetera. And I rarely have had anybody basically say, no, not going to participate within the study type of thing. So there'll be an ongoing plea with regards to, you know, having patients and or the families involved in basically these ongoing clinical trials, and we'll tell you more about that, et cetera. I think going to CF Canada, you'll definitely hear about all the stuff that's going on every front. Transparency has been fantastic in terms of research, in terms of education, in terms of funding, and everything else from that perspective. And I can say I've worked with a lot of organizations, and CF Canada is interesting. All the money that they raise, all this money that people are talking about, that Kin Canada and everybody else that were, like in excess of 95% of the money is actually going right to patient care / research. No huge overhead in terms of, you know, in terms of just administrators and bureaucrats and everything else, and from that perspective type of thing. So I'm really proud of that because, as I said, that's the mantra that started with Doug Summerhays, and that's the mantra that's basically going to carry through all the way through. So their overhead is extremely small, very low. They've got a skeleton staff doing a lot of things that in fact are out there. So CF is personal, and we have your back. Okay, and we'll get there.